Hey, welcome back to the episode of the Geek Centurions. Me, your boy Eli,
Hey Joe.
and we are here to finally talk about our review on the 2022 movie, The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson, and that's all we really need to know. Andy Serkis is in it too. He did a good job, by the way.
Yeah.
And so by the time this episode releases, it's been at least like a week or two since it's released. So I think it's fine to go into spoilers. Because
Yeah.
let's face it, I don't think we could have held in on a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, because as as people probably might know, this well, first of all, this is a new Batman, in its
New
own
Batman, new world, new
yeah
universe.
yeah its own continuity, separate from what is essentially the current DCEU. Um, and yeah, it's a bit it's following Batman in not year one but year two,
Mm-hmm. I
which
thought it
is
was year three.
well, I mean, well, yeah, I think he said in I think year two. I don't know. He Batman did say he was doing this for 2 years now,
Mm-hmm.
at least. So yeah, probably I don't know. I guess in my brain, I think year one,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's now year two or whatever.
Basically, we're not. They do the sort of homecoming thing where like we're not doing the origin. You know the origin. You know who gets shot and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they point out that yes, Thomas and Martha Wayne got killed. They don't know who killed them, and obviously Bruce is upset. It's very much a young Batman. Just he's still getting his ropes across.
Mm-hmm.
Like he still he gets, not to say that he's invincible.
No, no, no. I think, and it's apparent throughout this film, and we'll talk about it as when we do like our 1 minute quick review of the film. But essentially, this is a more like I would say grounded Batman. Like Jesus Christ, the amount of times he actually gets injured is actually very apparent. It's very noticeable in some areas, and there are times where I'm like, oh yeah, he's just barely starting off. He's like not really, used to what he's gonna be, and that's essentially the main thing going on throughout this film. It's how he's also has a level of inexperience, but he's still sort of it emphasizes his intellect more so than any of the other Batman movies. I would say.
Yeah, especially considering this is a the villain for the movie.
Yeah. So the villain of the movie is technically there's more villains. Kind of like how I'm gonna compare it to No Way Home because it's the most recent one. How No Way Home has a plethora of villains, like almost a Sinister Six.
Mm-hmm.
Here you have at least three villains, and all of them are used. They're all connected in some sort of way,
Right.
and they all kind of have a connection with the Riddler. Some of them have a bigger role, some of them have a smaller role, and some of them have are the reason for such things to happen.
Right.
Right? But the Riddler is the main stage character. He's the one that drives the story.
Mm-hmm.
And might I add, holy shit, he's a great Riddler. The actor playing Riddler is amazing.
Yeah, because I feel like with the Riddler, you usually get one or two Riddlers. You get a very campy, over the top Riddler, i.e.,
Jim Carrey,
Jim Carrey's Riddler from Batman
forever.
Forever. Which, I mean, he's not a bad Riddler, but
No,
he's
no, no, no. I think generally everyone can agree that Jim Carrey's Riddler, because a lot of people tend to have a very mixed feeling towards the Schumacher films.
yeah,
But there's a level of camp and fun with them that I can agree with. Jim Carrey is especially one in Batman Forever. Because if you were to go with like the more zany, cartoony joke Riddler, then yeah, that's the Riddler.
yeah, and with this film, we went with the more like the other Riddler that we sometimes get, who's like a very mastermind, like has very creative riddles and you need to solve and stuff.
Yeah, some of the stuff will even trump you if you're not smart enough.
Yeah, so they definitely went with that route, especially given how grounded this Batman story is. They definitely go with a bit of a serial killer kind of route with him as well.
Yeah, you'll get especially with it, if you look at the way his outfit is designed, a lot of the ways his riddles and like you know the stuff that he does is very, you know, especially the Zodiac killer kind of levels of teasing, and like a lot of serial killers, and especially if you're a big like true crime fanatic who likes those serial killers that tend to have like little notes and little tricks and all that stuff, whether it be like BTK or like I said earlier Zodiac killer, um, maybe even like I don't want to say Black Dahlia because Black Dahlia was like just the one murder, right? But so he was suspected for doing like more, right? So, but you'll find a lot of stuff like that within this iteration of the Riddler. So yeah, he is a very violent person.
Yeah, obviously. There's a lot of like crazy, almost Saw-like conundrums that he puts people through.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. We also have I forget her name, but we have Catwoman in this movie.
Zoe
as well.
Kravitz.
Zoe Kravitz, yeah, who I think did a fantastic job in her role.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's sort of I guess a brief rundown. Batman. He's
You're forgetting Jim Gordon,
right. Jim Gordon,
who at this point isn't commissioner yet, but is more of detective. And really, I would say the interaction between him and Bruce are probably one of the best ones to have, along with even. Well, I'll get into my review, my deeper thoughts later. But Andy Serkis, in my opinion, is a really well casted Alfred.
Yeah, honestly, I completely forgot that who was playing Alfred in this movie because I didn't necessarily keep that much track of like who is cast for who in this movie. So I think it was a legitimate surprise for me. I was like, wait, Andy Serkis is Alfred in this?
I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So any other characters? Falcone was great. The actor who played Falcone,
John Turturro.
John Turturro, the Jesus himself, did a great job. Colin Farrell as the Penguin, who's like unrecognizable in this role.
Yeah, absolutely.
The makeup on him was amazing,
Mm-hmm.
but he did a fantastic job as the Penguin, and I think that's about it. Any like notable characters, but yeah, but we'll talk more about like specifically Bruce, Selena, and some of these actors in later of this episode. But essentially, we're just gonna give our 1 minute thoughts on this film, and towards the end we'll give our rating, just how we usually are. This is more for people who don't know. But Joyce, you'll start us off first in 1 minute. What do you think of the film?
All right, The Batman by Matt Reeves is definitely definitely a great Batman film. It explores a lot of the characters very well. It's very interesting to see a young Bruce in this sort of way. That's not like the Batman Begins of Christopher Nolan. It's very different. I love the cinematography for some of the shots. It looks great. It does seem pretty cool to see sort of Gotham in this sort of very like hellish landscape, and seeing sort of Bruce having to deal with the Riddler and also like various stuff from his past, and trying to like figure out like what's going on. Just seeing sort of that one aspect of Batman we don't usually see, the cape, the world's greatest detective kind of thing. It was really awesome. And overall, yeah, I think Robert Pattinson is a pretty great Batman.
All right, so you went a little bit over, but that's great. All right, but now I totally agree with everything you just said. And now this is the moment where I give my 1 minute review. So, The Batman by Matt Reeves is essentially one of, and many would argue, one of the best Batman movie. I personally would say it's probably the second best, probably behind Dark Knight, but that's always me. I kind of jump back and forth on that situation. But everyone in this movie has acted really well. They do a really good job of portraying the characters that are from page to screen. And most notable roles, obviously, is Robert Pattinson. I do feel like this is an early Batman, so you're not going to get all that you would like out of the Bruce Wayne aspect of the character. But considering the roles that we are getting into, this really does focus more on Batman's role as a detective. There are times where even he stumbles upon some of his work or his detective skills, but it all leads into a larger narrative about what it means to become a Batman and what is Batman's relationship to the city. And for that, I do really appreciate it. We will give a review, and it's just all good, all good. But yeah, no, it's masterful work. Really comes from a place that from a person who really knows Batman. But yeah, okay, so that's our review. So this is where we're gonna get more into the spoiler aspect. Obviously, when you're doing a story involving the Riddler, the big question is how are the riddles? And like I said earlier, sometimes I got stumped. There's some. Well, I won't go that deep into it. There is a riddle that involves kind of like Spanish, and clearly I am a person who knows Spanish because I speak español. Y mi español es no perfecto, pero un poco bien. And if you understand, I'm sorry. If you didn't, yeah. But essentially, there is a moment where I'm like, it stumped me because, like the characters, they read it as Spanish, but they didn't realize, oh, this is bad Spanish.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alfred is the one that sort of decodes it first, because the Riddler has these glyphs or whatever that they have to decode, and Alfred is able to decode it, but he mentions that clearly the guy doesn't know Spanish because this is not like that great Spanish. But I mean, the whole thing, I think what probably would stump a lot of people is that it's not about. Like, the reason why the Spanish is bad is because it's like it's this whole, like, secret message that you need to put for, like, something else separate. Because initially it's like, oh, we have to find... Because the whole plot of this is that the Riddler is essentially targeting various...
well-known Gotham.
Well-known Gotham, like, officials and police people and stuff. Connected to this big crime bust they did like last year or whatever, and pretty much it's sort of like the Riddler's like, I'm gonna expose the truth, like the dark secret of Gotham, and it's gonna tear it down to the ground. And Bruce is very much like, well, this is bad. I gotta figure out what the hell's going on, and especially because the Riddler is calling Batman out. At the first crime scene, like all the police are like, what the hell is this guy doing here? Jim, why are you bringing here? It's because he asked for him. Because he keeps leaving notes for Batman. It's like, for the Batman, I need you to solve this for me. So
yeah, because throughout the film, these two, the Riddler sees Batman as sort of a kindred spirit. So these two, that we clearly come from the same cloth, right?
Yeah.
But ironically, he doesn't know. And I will say, I did get stumped a bit because I thought for a second, like, Riddler knew he was Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, there is a moment, like, towards the very end of this film, where the Riddler has, like, released, like, a video or of some kind on the internet, and they're trying to, like, the police are trying to, get rid of the security lock for it, or something. And, like, there's various things on the walls of, like, the Riddler's, like, hideout of, like, who is the Batman and stuff, and like he even calls for him to like meet up with the Batman in his cell, and Bruce is very much like, oh shit, does he know who I am? And they do. I won't lie, it is kind of a tense moment when you sort of like think like, oh shit, maybe the Riddler knows, but at the end of the day, the Riddler doesn't know. He's more like just talking about Bruce Wayne as the person, and not like, oh, I know you're Bruce Wayne, But I won't. I think that was like definitely like a cool like little like kind of fake out, but also like because it's very tense because you're like, because for most Batman films like, I mean like, most villains don't know who he is. I mean I know in Dark Knight Rises, Bane is like figures it out. But I think that's mainly because of the League of Shadows and stuff like that.
Yeah, Talia al Ghul has a hand in that.
Yeah. So, like, it's not, like, that, like, big of a deal. But in this one, it's, like, obviously, it's, like, Bruce is, like, this is, like, sort of, like, I guess it's his first big, like, villain thing he has to go through. Because for the most part, he's been, like, taking out, like, various low-level crooks and stuff. And he's like, oh, shit, someone of this crazy...
this caliber is figures it out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting to see just, that sort of worriness in his... Because he's still so early and everyone's just like... So, kind of don't know how to feel about the Batman. Because really the only person he has in contact with is Jim Gordon.
Yeah, like, Jim's, like, the only one that's, like, alright with Bruce, I mean, this is like they mentioned like at the beginning of the film, like like they've only just started implementing the bat signal, and only Gordon uses it to like call him up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was gonna say earlier when like Batman shows up at the first crime scene of this murdered mayor.
Who's up for re-election, by the way?
Yeah, who's up for re-election, and that's sort of like kind of a bit of a crux in the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
All the cops are like, "What is this guy doing here? Like, we don't trust him. He's a maniac."
Mm-hmm.
And there's that tension throughout for most of the movie up until like towards the end, where like like they can finally sort of trust Batman to be like, okay, this guy's he's on our side basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's helping us out, and like it's the when we said that at the beginning of this movie, there's a culmination, and it's centered around sort of like the relationship between sort of the people in charge and like how basically they kind of screwed up or like unintentionally led to the screw up that is Gotham. And it's kind of centered around Bruce's family, right? This sort of and there's this idea of like especially with the Riddler's mindset is that Gotham was always going to be was always like a city underbelly kind of shit because of the people who who are in charge, and so like of sins of the father, and that's a word that's reiterated throughout the film, going through the the history of Gotham, with starting off with the Waynes. And it's funny because like throughout the film, there's a couple of comics that I clearly see where it was inspired by, and one of them was Jeff Johns' Earth One books, right? Jeff Johns wrote like the Earth One Batman stories, and they're still coming out. I think like really like random now, like it's like a graphic novel length, and they're like always they always come out like when they're ready. But in the earlier comics, in that they kind of go into that sort of situation because there's a note that Martha Wayne, why did you say that name? Kind of shit.
Yeah.
It's revealed that she is an Arkham, and if you are at least know a bit of like Batman lore, you know what Arkham is.
Yeah.
It's Arkham Asylum, and they kind of establish that, hey, the Arkhams are known to be crazy, and in the book that Jeff John wrote, it's kind of like it's not telling you it is, but it's kind of like giving you the idea that like, oh, maybe that's where like Batman gets this like craziness from it, like the smart kind and the kind of the good stuff that is Bruce comes from the father, and the crazy comes from the mother, and they've been kind of doing that back and forth really in the comics. I mean, look at Flashpoint.
Yeah.
In the comics, Martha Wayne becomes the Joker after losing her son, and Thomas Wayne becomes Batman.
Yeah.
So it's not that unheard of, and it's kind of like this interesting story of like sort of legacy and how it affects the future, and how what you do affects further on.
Yeah.
Because there is a sort of theme going on with that, and you can kind of see that especially with Batman. Batman's sort of handling of a lot of situations. Like there's a reason why even in the trailers they always go like I'm vengeance kind of thing, because there's a reason for that, and when you watch the movie you'll know what I mean. But essentially that's sort of a really interesting thing that I think the movie goes with, right?
Yeah.
Because this sort of idea that because let me ask you this: how many times have people said, "Oh, if Bruce stopped being Batman, how better the city will be"? That kind of shit.
Yeah.
This answers the question, right? This movie answers that question, like, because how many times have people said, why is Gotham always so fucked up? Why isn't Batman? What if like Bruce stopped being Batman and started putting his money into? Well, this movie kind of answers that question.
Right.
Well, it answers an idea as to why that's kind of like hard to do.
Yeah, because as it turns out, like a lot of the people that the Riddler targeted are essentially dirty. They've essentially have been funneling various monies from, because the whole idea was that Thomas Wayne, he was running for mayor and announced a sort of renewal project, which he would spend a lot of his money on like trying to rebuild Gotham, and then he gets killed, and all that stuff happens. But the renewal plan still goes through effect or whatever. But the thing is, the people in charge are essentially using it to funnel money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that and it goes through a lot of hands, and like obviously, gangsters are involved and all that stuff. And that sort of I guess that does. Yeah, I understand what you mean when you say like it answers that question where it's like, well, it's not necessarily Batman that's causing all this problem. It's more of the city itself and the people who run it are essentially just taking advantage of, all this money that's supposed to be used to help the city, but they use it for their own means.
Exactly. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting question, and it's something that I feel like only stuff like Batman could talk about, because he is someone who is of that nobility, but is doing actually something good with it. Questionable, yes, but he compared to everyone else, he's probably the better option. And I will say that throughout the film, Jesus Christ, when you're saying that it gets tense, holy fuck, does it get tense?
Yeah.
Because goddamn, this is like the bomb scene had me on edge. It's okay. I'm gonna throw a little like nerd film stuff to you, Joey, because I know you get this. What was that old famous saying from Alfred Hitchcock when it comes to two people talking?
I think it's sort of it becomes like if it's just. I think I know what you mean. If the audience knows that there's a bomb in the room, but no one else knows, right? It's kind of like everything's tense because you know that there's a countdown, but the characters don't know that. Yeah, so I get, and that's sort of a good way for tension, and I get what you mean by that.
Yeah, because that's basically what happens. The characters know, but it's just like, why is this man has a bomb around his neck? Why is the Riddler doing this? And like, it's a lot of like tense moments, and like a lot. And I'm not saying that this movie isn't devoid of funny, of like comedy. There is some comedy throughout the film. I'm just gonna say the thumb drive.
The Riddler does a nice little funny, I guess, pun, if you will, with a thumb drive.
Not gonna go that deep into it.
I mean, I guess we won't spoil that one, but judging from how we describe the Riddler, I think you guys can figure out what we mean by a thumb drive. There are like bits of comedic moments to like sort of liven it up, and I think what they do with Gordon. Like, I don't know why. Like, I feel like he's very much... They styled him off of, like, he's a very hard-boiled detective, like, Jesus Christ. Like, he seems like the classic sort of detective you would see in, like, in a crime movie.
Yeah.
And he has to, he just has to deal with Batman and stuff. And, like, sometimes Batman will do, like, obviously he does the thing where, like, he's there for 1 second and then he leaves and he just, like, Jordan's like, where'd you go?
he's that one detective who's good and, like, is by the book. But even he gets stumbled upon a lot. I guess like Morgan Freeman in Seven.
Yeah. And I won't. And speaking of Seven, this movie does give me Seven vibes, which I feel like might be somewhat intentional because both movies involve having to find a serial killer and involved in this, in a very sort of like grisly town. Except the difference here is that. Instead of having Matt Damon as your young, hot-blooded rookie detective with this older, like, I just want to get to retirement detective, you got Gordon and handling stuff, and then you got Batman.
Yeah.
you got Batman instead of Matt Damon, and Batman doesn't kill, so
Wait,
you know.
You mean Brad Pitt?
Brad Pitt. I'm sorry.
Joey, what happened? That's like one of your favorite movies.
I know. Listen. They both, like, all right, you know what it is? They're both in Good Will Hunting, right?
Yeah.
And
wait, Brad Pitt isn't good in Good Will Hunting.
Is he not?
No.
I know Matt Damon's in it. There's someone else in there, no?
Yeah, I think it's Ben Affleck.
Listen, all white people look the same to me. I'm sorry.
Listen, I'm not gonna listen. White people in the 90s, yeah, they all had an almost distinct look.
Yeah.
I mean, double check on that because I'm starting to question myself. But anyways, continue with your thought.
My point is that this movie shares a lot of similarities to Seven.
Zodiac too.
and I mean, well, yeah, obviously, because the Riddler is definitely very inspired by the Zodiac killer in this. So obviously, the movie Zodiac would share similarities. So,
I mean, if I could say like one great thing, another great thing about this movie is that, like you said earlier, the cinematography was awesome. Just the opening scenes, really. I wouldn't say shot. The opening like moments of Bruce narrating, talking about his role in the city, how everyone and how everyone is, and just like the moment where they all these villains are just running around, and like they look up to see the bad signal, and then like just look at a shadowy corridor and be like, I'm gonna run away.
yeah.
It's just like so good. I was like, because they're like, we all know where he's gonna show up because we've seen the trailer, and there's that one sequence from the trailer that shows up early in this movie. But like the fact that this just the build up to that was something I really enjoyed in that movie. A lot of the actors, like I said, Zoe Kravitz was an amazing. It's almost like her movie at the same time.
I mean, yeah, Catwoman definitely has a bit of a role in this movie. She's definitely not just a side character. She has her own arc she goes through. And yeah, seeing her relationship with Bruce is interesting. Although I will admit, a little jarring that they're like next encounter of like, all right, we gotta work together stuff. She's already kind of like into him.
Oh, she's yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like I won't lie, that's a little jarring, but I get it. Like Batman, Catwoman have always been sort of an item back and forth, you know. So
well, my thing, if I would say like one weird thing about it, is just how quickly adept she is to the whole cat burglar thing.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's clearly implied that she's been like moonlighting and doing like some of this stuff as a side job for like a while. I mean, she clearly has all these tools already, so she's been like a cat burglar for like a while, and it's not until obviously meeting with Bruce and stuff that we get to see her sort of display that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, she has her own sort of side plot and very sort of interesting. I will admit, they do sort of. I think they try to set up like that. I don't think they're gonna set up that she's gonna have her own spin-off movie or whatever. Because she does. By the end of the movie, she decides to leave Gotham
To go to Bloodhaven.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. That's a comic book reference. Yeah, like, but I wouldn't be like surprised or shocked if she decides to come back.
Say though, the stuff that she was up to throughout the movie was probably one of the most interesting things that she's done. It's just in the fact that it all leads into like, because again, like I said, it involves like your past and what you leave for the future. She does confront her past in a sense, and it's really interesting to see how that turns out. Penguin was great. Falcone was great. I think the one person I feel like was great, but just was lacking, and not lacking in terms of acting. It's just lacking in the story. Like this character didn't have much to do, and it was sadly had to be the one character I wish didn't go through this, and it was Alfred. Because I really liked the moments with Alfred. My only thing was like, man, there's not enough moments of like interactions between the two aside from them doing their jobs.
Yeah, they don't get like a whole ton of like. I mean, obviously, like Bruce is he's kind of like a bit of an emo child.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, like he's like, "You're not my dad, Alfred. Leave me alone."
You're not my dad.
Because like Alfred's like, "Listen, you need to meet with the investors and all that stuff." So I was like, "Leave me alone, Alfred. This is more important." It's like, all right, but I mean, obviously Alfred helps out, like.
Which are great scenes.
Yeah, and I think it's implied that Alfred has trained him in fighting a little bit.
Yeah, I think they went with that one version of Batman, which I think we both agreed that's one of my favorite.
Beware the Batman.
Yeah, like we're Beware the Batman cartoon where we find out Alfred was an MI6 agent, whatever.
Yeah, he was former MI6, and he's the one that trained Bruce in all his fighting skills and stuff. Which, I mean, that's freaking cool.
Like that's like, how can you not like that take? It's like,
yeah,
it's like, wait, Alfred, were you James Bond?
were you James Bond bonding it up, and then you're like, I'm gonna retire to be this dude's butler, and then you train the next, you train Batman. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, that is a pretty cool take. I mean, obviously,
It's very limited.
yeah, I guess it is very limited in terms of like, okay, clearly like Alfred can't have like done all like teach them like all this crazy ninja and all that stuff tactics. But yeah, it is neat, and I do agree that at least Alfred does feel not like he has a very minor role. Like, not to say that most, because it feels like a lot of times the role of Alfred has always been sort of like a wise sort of mentor figure that sort of like tells Bruce like sort of like, you know, whenever Bruce is having like difficulties, he's always the guiding voice of like, you need to do what's right, right? And we do get that here, but at the same time, yeah, for how long this movie is, it is sort of criminal how like very few scenes we get of Andy Serkis as Alfred, because yeah, he is a good Alfred.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I think it's implied that he's been trying to, but he can't really reach him. And I get that. I totally understand that, but there's also like not enough like sentimental moments for us to really get to, like, because there's a scene where he gets hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce is like, I gotta save Alfred, kind of thing. But like, I don't know, for me there wasn't that much, like, if I didn't know it was Alfred, right, I wouldn't care.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess.
Because, like, I was like, oh, no, Alfred, no. Don't tell me you're going to do this to him. And Bruce is, like, trying to, like, be quick about it and be like, I gotta go save Alfred. And they do, like, a cop-out.
Well, yeah, it's because, if we want to get into it, the Riddler's next target is Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, because, like I said, it's...
you know, it's a whole, yeah, like...
He's targeting
all the rich and powerful people in Gotham, and especially, like, the Gotham government, but particularly Bruce Wayne, because of his father, Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the sins of the father, kind of thing. And, you know, Bruce is essentially just trying to get back to Wayne Tower, and, essentially
he doesn't make it in time.
Yeah, it doesn't make it in time. I mean, Alfred doesn't die. Obviously, he gets hospitalized, which I guess it's an explosion. So you're kind of just like, how the hell did Alfred survive that?
He's an MI6 agent, man. He's used to it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but like, yeah, it is pretty crazy. Because I guess my thing was, considering this was a Riddler story, and like, to be fair, Alfred already does a bit of this because I already mentioned it. Alfred helps to decode a lot of the ciphers and stuff. You know, so I was thinking, oh, maybe Alfred's role in this movie is like gonna be super support. Like, I'm gonna be helping you crack some of these ciphers, and you know, there's probably gonna be
because this is an early Batman. He probably wouldn't be smarter. Like, it would take like at least 2, maybe 3 people to help to crack this code, right?
Yeah, and like, you know, maybe Bruce sees it this way, you know, gets a riddle this way, but then Alfred has like a moment of like, well, what if we just do this? And it's like, aha moment. You know, just in the back, just sort of like trying to just decipher all that stuff. But no, they sort of figured the cipher out pretty quickly. And yeah, and Alfred just becomes more of like emotional support, which, I mean, it's not bad because
it's what you want Alfred to be, but there's not enough like emotion. There's not enough of that to really garner what they try to do. And I don't know, maybe in the sequel will be more better, which, let's face it, they're probably gonna get. But yeah, no, I still wish there was more scenes with Alfred. I feel like a lot of people are gonna be bothered by the portrayal of Bruce in the Batman movie.
Yeah, because I think most people are used to Bruce Wayne having these two personas. Obviously his Bruce Wayne persona being the billionaire playboy who just sort of like goofs off and like, you know, and that's his explanation.
That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, to contrast, he's very serious and business sense of always on business approach with Batman. And, we obviously saw that with the Christopher Nolan movies. And here it's more of like Bruce is a very recluse guy. Like, they make a joke about, like, attending the mayor's funeral and, like...
They're like, holy shit, you're here?
Yeah, like, even Carmine Falcone...
who's known to be a recluse.
Is like, I'm surprised you're even here.
Like, you're more recluse than I am, and that's saying something.
Yeah. So, and which I get. I think the main reason why they do this is because I think as we mentioned, this is still early Batman, and I think Bruce still hasn't sort of like figured out like a way to like separate the two. Like try to find some way of like, okay, I need to be in Bruce Wayne mode, and okay, I need to be in Batman mode. Which I think makes sense.
Yeah.
Because this Bruce is definitely sort of like driven to do all these things. I mean, obviously, he's like, I am vengeance, He's very driven, very motivated, and he can't really turn off Batman mode.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think, like, hell, half the reason he attends the funeral is mainly because, like, he's like, the killer's going to be here because, He's probably gonna get. He wants to see like this stuff go down. All right, so he's more like attentive to just things happening around him.
He's concerned more about being the Batman than being Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
which is not a thing. I don't think it's something that most people would be okay with, but in context of the story, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I do agree in the context of the story, and I think probably even like in the comics, like probably early versions, like Batman in his early years probably was kind of like that, and it's not until he sort of like develops like, okay, I need to like, like develop this persona as Bruce Wayne to like essentially keep people off his scent of being Batman. It's like there's no way Bruce could be Batman. Look at this guy; he's a fun, jolly guy.
He's scared shitless when Joker shows up. How is he gonna be Batman?
Yeah, pretty much. So, that's sort of like, I guess, that the explanation, and I do understand that some people probably would be sort of like
miffed.
I guess, I guess they probably would be a little upset, but I think that it's more of like well, what is this kind of vibe? It's like it's something that people aren't used to, but I mean, obviously, we're probably gonna get more sequels with this.
It's kind of like how we've talked about this earlier, like a while back, kind of like in the Homecoming movies, how essentially this is the build up to Peter Parker being Spider-Man, right? Being the true, honest Spider-Man. This is in a way that, but in kind of like in one film, or in his way, right?
Yeah, I think, and I think that's what they want. That's definitely what they did. I think in this film is this is sort of a Batman who's learning. Okay, what does it mean to be Batman? What does it mean to be like what the city needs? Yeah. Because at the end of the movie, Bruce has this sort of revelation of like, maybe I shouldn't be this sort of like,
right? Because like throughout the film, it's like the way you affect it kind of leads into to how it is later in the future, right? There's a moment where he the phrase that he continuously utters, "I am vengeance," kind of hits him back, and that's when he realizes, oh, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, like he sort of decides to like stop being this sort of like symbol of fear and like trying to like crack down on the crime that way, and sort of sees himself more as like a symbol of hope, I guess. He has to realize like, okay,
a very superhero thing to do.
Yeah, like I can't just be this vengeance filled rage machine that goes after criminals. I have to like because he's very much like, crime's still up even though I've been doing this for 2 years. What's my effect on the city? He realizes his effect on the city is to give people hope, to inspire them. It's like, hey, there's a guy out there trying to, get rid of the bad guys. And that's what he learns at the end of the movies, or like I have to be this symbol of hope, to help give people the reassurance that we can change.
Yeah. So I think we're getting close to it, because I think that's about all I got to say. But let me ask you this: I say this movie is almost as good as The Dark Knight. I say it's better than Batman Begins. It's better than a lot of the other stuff. What do you think? Let me ask you this. Let me ask you that.
I think they're. I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't. I guess I like them both equally.
Yes.
I don't know which is better, but because I think The Dark Knight. I think half of what makes The Dark Knight so good is the Joker performance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, that contrast between Christian Bale's Batman and Heath Ledger's Joker. That sort of like bashing rivalry and stuff. And here, I definitely do agree. I do think, not agree, that Batman and the Riddler have a similar sort of vibe of like Riddler like really does make this movie work, like especially his portrayal and like just like the actor, and how they bounce off each other, especially in that scene in Arkham Asylum with them both. And yeah, I think this film more or less definitely sort of keeps true to what makes Batman Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't like really think off the top of my head like do I prefer one or the other, but I think they're both like
one of the best Batman movies ever made, right?
Yeah, they're both like some of the best Batman movies ever made. So
no, I totally understand where you're coming from. I feel the same way whenever people ask me about Spider-Verse or Far From Home. I feel like those two are the epitome of like what makes Spider-Man so great. Like, and especially when it comes from like two different perspectives, one being from Miles Morales and one being from Peter Parker. I totally get what you're saying in that sense. I guess my only other thing was like, how did you? I mean, we already said Pattinson is probably one of the best Batmans we have. Really, I don't think there's ever been a bad Batman portrayal.
Yeah, I feel like most people have been picked to play Batman bring their own things to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like Michael Keaton, I think was a solid Batman, and then you had Val Kilmer, who I think he was all right.
Very forgettable.
Yeah, he's just very forgettable. George Clooney as Batman, I think, was more of like
a great Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, and he's a very campy Batman, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then Christian Bale's Batman, I think, worked. I mean, obviously, at the same time, it started that whole meme of like Batman just having a very growly voice,
I'm Batman.
Yeah, I'm Batman.
Rachel, where are you, Rachel?
Where are they? Yeah.
Yeah, I think at least Christian Bale was a nice. I wouldn't say perfect, but it was a okay balance between both Bruce.
Yeah, because he could play Bruce well, and he could play Batman pretty alright.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Ben Affleck's Batman, and honestly, I feel like all the stuff that's gone down with the DCEU and stuff has very sort of
soured
it, because we got like a version of Batman that's very old and like bitter and angry. We never really got to see. We got to see him be like a little bit like what like a prime Batman would be.
Mm-hmm. Like he didn't get much of a chance.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't.
But damn, did he fit the role?
He definitely did. Like I think he definitely worked to like fit the role of being that sort of Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will admit, probably the one thing I really didn't care for in those movies is he had like a voice changer to make his voice deeper.
I was okay with it.
Like, if that decision to me has always been sort of like one of those like one of those sort of decisions of like, well, clearly, if Batman's just talking with his regular voice, people are gonna know he's Bruce Wayne, kind of things. And here we don't have that. It's just Robert Pattinson talking in a bit more serious tone when he's Batman. So that's why I like the most about his portrayal is that he's not really like he's not doing another voice. He's just being more serious with his voice.
Pattinson?
Patterson, yeah.
Okay. For a second, I thought you were talking about
Affleck, no, Affleck, he has a voice changer. I don't like it. I get the decision. I just didn't think it's necessary.
Well, I think another thing. If I were to, I get what you're coming from. I think what it is that it's not that different from his actual voice.
Yeah.
It doesn't deepen it. It just distorts it a bit.
Yeah.
Like just a bit. It's still like no, that's still your voice.
Yeah.
Like anyone can get that. All right, I think yeah. Well, so what's your rating then?
Yeah, I think this is gonna be a solid 9 out of 10 for me.
So why 9 out of 10 out of 10?
I think half the reason for like not being 10 out of 10 is I don't want to say it's because of the length, because it is a long movie.
It's almost like 3-hour movie.
Yeah, and unlike Far From Home, which is also like almost 3 hours, Far From Home doesn't feel like 3 hours. This movie definitely felt like it, but I get the reason why it's this long, because a lot of it is based on the mystery of where's the Riddler, who is he, and like can we like stop him before he kills someone again. It's all about the mystery and stuff, and I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely some scenes that I think could have been cut down a bit. I know the car chase scene is definitely like a solid highlight of the movie, especially towards the end, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a cool shot at the end of that car chase scene, but at the same time, I'm just like, man, this went on a bit too long for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's cool, but it went on just a bit too long. And I think probably another thing is that Catwoman sort of plot. I mean, it has a nice conclusion, but then she's kind of like there in the final like act,
mm-hmm.
like randomly. I assume just to like have her be there,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean. It's a little odd, but I mean, I'm fine with it for the most part. I just think that, like, it probably would have fit better if,
she was along for the whole ride.
yeah, if she was kind of along for the whole ride,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think those are sort of, like, more of the stuff. Obviously, like, I guess the Alfred stuff is also kind of that. But besides all that, I mean, I still think it's a great movie, It really, it's a real solid movie, a great movie, and like truly, it's a great version of Batman.
No, I'm with you on the whole 9 because like it's not a perfect movie, right? I rarely ever give a 10 out of 10. I mean, I gave Far From Home a 10 out of 10. That's mostly because like for me, there was a lot of emotional weight there and like a lot of like catharsis and a lot of like moments I'm like, oh my god, this is so good kind of situation. There's a lot of that, but there's always I felt there's something lacking in it, and I think it maybe, like I said earlier, the Alfred scenes, some of the stuff that went on for too long, but I felt like a lot of it was done really well. That it's kind of hard for me not to say it's not almost a perfect movie. But yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. A 9 out of 10 is really my thing. So 9 out of 10 is really basically what we're gonna give it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like almost a perfect score. That doesn't denigrate it at all. But yeah, let's we can both agree on that. Almost perfect. But yeah, guys, if you enjoyed what we heard, be sure to follow us on social media at the Geek Centurions. We have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are most active on our Twitter. And if you go on Twitter, you'll probably find a link tree to all the podcasts that we're officially part of, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Pandora, and much, much more. And you will find a link to our YouTube for all you audio listeners out there who want to check out the guys, how we are and how we're doing. Be sure to follow us there, comment, like, subscribe. We also have a Patreon for anyone who wants to support us in any form of way. And yeah, the Batman, Matt Reeves' Batman. Go fucking watch this movie. It's still like we both gave it a 9 out of 10, and that should mean how good it is.
Yeah,
it is a really good movie, and for now, it's only in theaters. So go. Just like you did for Far From Home, go watch that movie.
Yeah,
it's so good. I think this is the second. This is the first movie review we did the year.
I think this is technically our first movie review because Far From Home was December. And we did that. I'm pretty sure we didn't post that in January. So we posted that in December. So
that was the last one before we went on break.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean the next one's probably gonna be what We got some shows coming up though.
Yeah, we have shows coming up, and I think the next big movie that we'll probably be doing is Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm. So look out for that. Anyways, guys, hope you guys enjoy and you guys have a good time. Anyways, later, guys. Peace.